Hello and welcome. Thanks for tuning in. This is AFC South time, and the last place team in the AFC South this year was the Jacksonville Jaguars. And with their first pick in the first round, 9th overall, they selected C.J. Henderson, cornerback from Florida University. Henderson has good size, good strength. He's strong, he's fast. I gave it a B+. I think Henderson still has a lot of skills to develop. He's a good athlete. He lacks experience, though. High football IQ, not really. And the ability to find the ball when his back is turned, also not very good. He needs to improve his zone coverage. He needs to play 100% of the time, which has been questionable. His work ethic and effort. And he needs to get better at tackling in the open field as well. So, that being said, good athlete, has room for development. He needs to develop a few traits. And overall, just become a more polished football player. He could definitely turn out to be a very good cornerback in this league, though. That's why I give it a B+, because the potential. And it's a need. So, that takes us to their 20th overall pick in the first round. Kevlon Chaisson, outside linebacker, LSU. I gave it an A because not only is it a need, but Chaisson also got the number 18 badge, which I explained earlier was when you wear number 18 for LSU, good character, good leader. So he's a good leader. This younger defense might need someone like that, especially losing Calais Campbell to the Ravens. He's a role model on and off the field, good head on his shoulders. Last year was his first year as a starter, and he had 60 stops for 13.5 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks. His weaknesses seem to be one-on-one when he's in the one-on-one situations with blockers. But that will be able to be corrected with time and more experience. So overall, he should be good. He did have an ACL injury and has missed playing time, which is why I think with experience and more playing time, he'll improve his techniques. He'll be able to get around the block that much quicker, and I think he'll be able to make a decent impact. And not to mention his leadership abilities, which is what you want when you're rebuilding a team. So overall, I think it's a good pick. I gave it an A. So solid pick for Jacksonville. Round 2. 42nd overall pick, Laviska Shenault Jr., wide receiver from Colorado. Here's a man who, although Jacksonville desperately needs playmakers, Shenault, a little questionable. In 2018, he was one of the best wide receivers in college football. He ran the ball. He caught the ball. Touchdowns for both. He was the only wide receiver with 5 and 5 touchdowns in each. He did have more receiving touchdowns than 5, though. His playmaking ability was spectacular. However, last year, I don't know if it was, teams are covering him more, or they understand he's the number 1 target, cover him, double team him. But he did not have a standout year. It was a meh year. So he went from one of the best to the nation into a okay wide receiver last year. But I think if you improve the route running, because he's very motivated, high work ethic, so just improve the route running and his ball carrying and deep ball abilities, I think he could be very good. The only question is injury proneness, but I think that had to do with the heavy role that he was in Colorado. I don't think when he gets to Jacksonville it's going to be they're going to use him that much, especially when he first gets there. It'll give him time to develop. He does run physically, but that was it. You touch the ball too many times in a year and you run the way he does, you might get banged up. So I think he's got a high ceiling, and the question is whether or not Jacksonville can get him to that ceiling. But overall, good pick. I gave it a B+. Definitely a need for Jacksonville. And that takes us to their third round, 73rd overall pick, Devon Hamilton, defensive tackle, Ohio State. Not a good pick in my opinion. I gave it a D+. And the grade doesn't really reflect what I think of Hamilton. More why the heck they picked him, where they picked him, and when they picked him. He was not projected to go until the early 5th round, maybe late 4th, but way later of a pick. They stole him with an early 3rd round pick. It doesn't make sense. But let's talk about Hamilton. I think he is a good 5th, 6th round pick in my opinion. He's big. He's 6'4", 320. He 33 reps to the bench at 225. I think he's got the size to be you just put him there. He's gonna be a nice plug, a run stuffer. He also got a few sacks. So I think he could definitely become a rotational 4-3 defensive tackle, and maybe one day he could be a 3-4 nose tackle starter, but that's questionable, and it's going to take time. He needs time to develop. But overall, I think picking him later would have been fine. Picking him in the beginning of the 3rd round, a little bit of a rush. They had needs, and there were still some dynamic players available in the 3rd round, so questionable pick. But they went with it, and we will see what comes of Devon Hamilton at defensive tackle. That leads us into their 4th round, 116th overall pick, in which they picked Ben Bartch, offensive tackle from St. John's in Minnesota. It's tough when you're dealing with a Division III player. You question about how can he make the transition to the NFL level. But for Bartch's case, I gave it a B. Because it is a need for Jacksonville, and the size, speed are more impressive because I believe he transitioned from tight end to tackle. So athletically speaking, pretty good for a lineman. And I think the biggest question is how he's going to match up against the NFL talent and sized defensive linemen. So we'll see how he adjusts. There's not much you could say other than that. Other than whether or not if his quality of opponents was good enough and how he can take his skill set to the next level. That being said, it wasn't maybe a little early to pick him. So that's the only question. But overall, he could become decent. And Jacksonville had a few more 4th round picks. 4th round, 137th overall, they picked Josiah Scott, cornerback out of Michigan State. I gave it a B because he plays smart, he covers well, he reads routes very well, he anticipates them and recognizes them. He has ball hawks and swatting abilities, 32 passes deflected, 7 interceptions. He's quick, he's strong for his size. And when they played Penn State, played very well against KJ Hamler, Denver Broncos 2nd round pick, who could be a very good slot receiver in the league. So very good coverage there when he played him. For Scott, though, most of his problems lie around his smaller size and durability. So that being said, I think he could be a very good slot corner in this league, but I don't think he's somebody that you could sleep on I think he could be decent. So, good pick by Jacksonville. I gave it a B. It's a need. They need corners. So, I think sticking him in there against some of the smaller wide receivers in the league, I think he'll fare fairly well. So, not a bad pick. Which takes us to their 4th round, 140th round overall pick, Shaquille Quarterman. And this was an interesting one. Inside linebacker from Miami. And I gave it a B+. But I'll explain. Quarterman, stud out of high school. Very good at Miami. He was a 4-year starter at Miami, which you don't see a lot. So, he was very good. Stat sheet stuffer, 356 tackles, 46.5 for loss, and 12 sacks. However, athletically speaking, not as good as some of the other players in the nation. So that may affect his ability to transition and and dominate like he has in the college and high school level. At the NFL level, his athletic abilities finally might have gotten the best of him and how far he can take it. But that's not saying Quarterman's not a good football player. He's a good football player, and if he works at it, he could start. He could be a backup. He could be starter. I mean, the sky's the limits for him. It depends how he develops, and more so athletically than fundamentally. So, not a bad pick. Will he pan out? It's a big question mark. And a lot of development and a lot of work needs to go into Quarterman, and he needs. Hopefully, he realizes that, and hopefully, he has the work ethic to take his game and his athletic abilities to the next level. Because football-wise, very good player. So, 5th round, 157th overall, Jacksonville drafted Daniel Thomas, safety from Auburn. I gave it a C-. He's got good size, good speed. He plays tough. He plays determined. He is a tackle machine, helps out in the run support. But he's not very good when guarding wide receivers, especially the elite wide receivers, struggles in that. And he's not a ball hawk. So he could become a backup strong safety in the NFL. If he was bigger, he would probably make a better linebacker. So I don't know how. His coverage is such a weakness. I'm not sure how much time he's going to see in his NFL career, but they got stuff to work with his decent size and speed for a safety. So it remains to be seen. But I think it was a little bit of a weaker pick. I gave it a C-. But there's definitely something there that they could develop. So it's not a complete loss. Round 5, 165th overall. They picked Colin Johnson, wide receiver out of Texas. I gave it a B- simply because of the fact that Colin Johnson is 6'6", 222 pounds. And when a wide receiver is 6'6", 222 pounds, there's something there. So, even though at Texas he was not a standout wide receiver, that's not saying he doesn't have potential. I look at a team, Jacksonville, again, not many weapons. He could fly under the radar for 3 years, work on his route running, work on his deep ball abilities, tracking the ball. He could work on his strength, his speed. He needs to learn way more how to use his weight and his size. So I think if you get all that together, potentially speaking, he could be a pretty decent deep threat for Jacksonville moving forward. And Minshew can throw it there, so look out. It wasn't a must pick, but I think there's definitely a lot of potential there for Colin Johnson out of Texas. So overall, I think it was a decent pick, and I gave it a B-. Round 6, 189th overall, Jacksonville went quarterback, probably looking for a backup, and it wasn't a bad pick. I gave it an A- because I think if you're looking for a backup QB, I think Lutton's the guy. He's got a decent arm. He had 42 touchdowns to only 11 interceptions at Oregon State, 62% 100% completion percentage, strong arm. He's worked the pro-style offense, which is very good. And he could definitely be like a reliable backup quarterback when your guy goes down or just shaking up. He could definitely go in there, run the offense. He's reliable. He's not going to make that many bad throws, especially within 3 years. Give him time to develop. And I think it could be pretty decent. So, not a bad pick because I know they've decided to go with Minshew. They got rid of Foles. So this is a backup. And I think Lund will fill that role. It's a nice pick. It's better than wasting it. So, decent pick for Jacksonville there. That takes us to their last 2 picks. Tyler Davis was picked with their last 6th round, 206th overall pick as a tight end out of Georgia Tech. I gave it a D+, simply because of the fact that tight end is a need. But Davis is not going to be the guy. He just lacks experience. He's a quarterback turned wide receiver turned tight end. He lacks experience. He lacks blocking ability. He's not big enough to be a full tight end. He can make plays catching the ball, but that's about it. He is decently sized, but for tight ends speaking, blocking wise, I don't think he's gonna be that great, and he's not that big of a threat, so it's questionable. He might develop, but because he's not bad catching the ball. So at 6'4", 250, he could be a reliable target. But tight end, true tight end, D+, you might even see him move. But he'll be used more as a pass catching tight end, no doubt. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. So I think the D+ is actually a little harsh. It's probably more like a C. Definitely a piece of work. They could probably figure out maybe how to use him some way. So it's a decent pick. Nothing special though. And that brings us to the end of their draft with the 7th round, 223rd overall pick. Chris Claybooks. He's a cornerback out of Memphis. And I gave it a C-, because what you get out of Clay Brooks is not a corner. You get a special teams man. He's a good gunner, and he's a good return man. So if that's what they chose him for, fabulous. I don't think he's going to play corner very well. He's very unproven, very inexperienced. He's very small, doesn't have the size, and doesn't have the experience or skills to be an NFL corner. That being said, again, gunner, he could be very good. He's very fast, and return man, he is proven there too. So 7th round, you got somebody with some skill. Not bad. Overall, I gave the Jaguars a B, and I believe while they didn't hit any grand slams, they got a lot of pieces that could be developed. It's a lot of, okay, he's a good athlete, we'll take him. So a lot of those guys, a lot of developmental pieces. They got a few needs, and they did a fine job overall. So it wasn't bad, and overall, again, I gave it a B. I thought it was very, very well done in my opinion. So that was the Jacksonville Jaguars draft analysis. Next, the 3rd place team will be Indianapolis, and I'll do that next. Thank you for tuning into this, and stay tuned.